Hi, I'm Kim Campbell and welcome to our PlantPure kitchen. I'm excited to share a recipe with you today that was actually based in my childhood. I always loved breakfast casserole. This is called breakfast potato casserole, and my mom used to make a breakfast casserole that had eggs in it and it had cheese in it, and it was kind of sandwiched between bread. And there was cheese on the top, and she made different fillings, and I thought, well, let's make a casserole that's made out of potatoes. So what this is it's a layered casserole. It begins with potatoes. There's a really beautiful filling, which is spinach, mushrooms, and onions. And then we're going to make a wonderful cheese sauce that's going to go, and the cheese sauce is actually kind of like an egg sauce because it's going to go in the potatoes and it's going to go on top of the potatoes. This is a nice recipe because you can make it the night before and then you can stick it in the oven in the morning, or you can have it, for a brunch. You can have it for dinner. You could have this meal anytime. I just call it the breakfast potato casserole. And it's super easy to make because you can get a lot of your ingredients frozen. You don't have to have them fresh. I'm going to have fresh filling, but you certainly could do a frozen filling as well. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to make the vegetable filling. So I'm going to heat up the pan because I'm going to saute an onion. I'm going to saute mushrooms and spinach. And the recipe, I believe, calls for about 8 ounces of mushrooms. Here's the thing. You can put as many mushrooms in there as you want. You can put as much spinach in there that you want. This is just kind of a guide. So you saw that I heated up my pan. It's getting really hot. You want to make sure that pan gets good and hot because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to caramelize your onions and build flavor. I'm going to move a little bit around here. So while we're waiting for that to get hot, I wanted to show you what kind of potatoes I bought. I did not make my own hash browns. I bought them in a store. And you can buy hash browns frozen in a bag. You can make them, but when you make hash browns, you have to cook the potato and then you have to shred the potato, and it takes a lot of time. But if you order, or if you go to the grocery store and you get already made hash browns, they're pretty good. And this is a brand that I really like. It's Cascadian Farms. It's just 100% potatoes. I went to the store yesterday and I could not find the Cascadian potatoes that I wanted. This one's called a root vegetable hash brown, so it has Yukon gold potatoes, sweet potatoes, and carrots. So I'm going to be flexible today and I'm going to use those. Also, they're really, really pretty. A lot of hash browns, if you go to a mainstream grocery store, have dextrose in them. And dextrose is a sugar. It ends in OSE. And the reason they use the dextrose, it's a very, very small amount, but they do use it because it will help it to brown in the oven. I would not sweat the small stuff, and I have bought those before. I just happened to find this, so we'll set that aside over here. And then we'll go ahead and start sauteing these onions, and I think this is good and hot. Yes, it is. And move it around. Next to the stove, I always keep some water or vegetable broth or whatever it is I'm sauteing in. That because you don't want it to stick to the pan and burn. So I'll put that there. And also, I forgot to mention, if you're cooking along with me, you want to preheat your oven to about 400 degrees. Every oven is different. Some ovens 375, some ovens 400. For me, the magic number is 375 to 400. Ovens can vary. You can see this onion already is starting to get kind of brown, and the pan is getting brown. That's what you want. Those are the sugars coming out of the onion. And because I got my pan so hot, it's not sticking. So I'll go ahead and lift some of those sugars off the pan. This is what I call a dry saute. Whoever said you needed oil to cook with was wrong, because you can do this beautifully. Now I'm going to add my mushrooms. Mushrooms have a lot of moisture in them, so I'm probably not going to have to add any water to this. Remember, this is going to go in the oven and it's going to bake. So if you don't cook your vegetables all the way through, that's okay because it'll bake in the oven as well. This is where you can get really creative with this recipe. I'm not putting anything in here other than a little bit of sea salt. And the sea salt is going to help soften the mushrooms a little bit, take the moisture out. But you can do your filling any way you want. If you want to make more of maybe a Mexican filling, you could put chili powder in here. You could use a Mexican blend. You could put black beans in it. The center of your breakfast potato casserole can be anything. My mom used to use seafood. She would put seafood and eggs and cheese, and we don't do that. But you could do a Reuben filling if you wanted to do mushrooms and maybe a little bit of bacon tempeh and some sauerkraut. That would be a really beautiful mixture too. So you can see that these mushrooms are starting to cook down a little bit. I'm going to turn my stove down just a little bit. And if you notice, I didn't add the spinach yet. That's kind of the last thing I do because the spinach cooks really quickly and it wilts. So I just wait until the very end. If you're really lazy, like me, and I don't have my bag here, you can use a chopped frozen spinach. That's really nice. I keep bags of organic frozen spinach in my freezer because I use them in soups, I use them in stews. It's just a great way to incorporate more greens into your diet. I did find some hash browns here at a mainstream grocery store. I've never heard of this brand. And they're square. They don't look like, I'll pull them out and show them to you. They're square, but that works too. You can still make a potato casserole with that. And this one had 100% potatoes, no dextrose, no salt, no nothing. So, all right, these mushrooms are looking beautiful. I could just eat them like this. They're just such a nice filling. And the other thing you could put in here is any vegetable. You could put broccoli, you could put asparagus, you could put red peppers, spicy peppers. I'm going to go ahead and start wilting this. And I like a lot of filling in my breakfast casserole, so I tend to use a lot of vegetables. I think the recipe calls for a 10-ounce bag of frozen spinach. The thing about a recipe is it's just a guideline. The rules are meant to be broken. So I break them all the time, and sometimes I break them when I'm doing this show too, because I just improvise. And a lot of times you can't find things at the grocery store right now because of the pandemic. So you just kind of have to make do with what you find. And eat in season, that's really important. Go to your farmer's market, eat out of your garden. All right, so I'm gonna turn that down a little bit more. I'm just gonna let that do its thing while I'm making the cheese sauce. So I'll put my water over here. I don't think we'll need that anymore. So my potatoes are sort of ready to go. The next thing I want to do is build the cheese sauce. So I'm going to use a high-speed blender. That's a Vitamix. You can use Blendtec, or you could use a bullet. I have a bullet at home, but I'm just going to use this. We'll start out with 2 cups of soy milk. You can use any plant-based milk that you like. I happen to like soy milk. I happen to like this brand. It's made with 100% soybeans. There's not a lot of junk in it. And it's really just easy to find. You can find it anywhere. So we'll go with that. And then the next thing is cashews, raw cashews. So I found something that I wanted to share with you, because I tend to buy raw cashews because I have a blender that will blend it up really quickly. But I found this, and it's called cashew flour, and it's just ground up cashews. And this was actually cheaper than buying the whole cashew. So if your blender's not, a high-speed blender, you could use the cashew powder. You could even soak it just to get it so it would blend a little bit better. But it's not exactly 1-to-1. So this calls for a half a cup of cashews. You might want to use about slightly less, like maybe a third a cup of cashew flour. This is really nice. Make sure that when you use them, you're storing it in your freezer or your refrigerator. There's a lot of fats and nuts and seeds, and you don't want them to go rancid. So I keep all of that in my freezer. So, all right, I'm going to turn this off because the spinach is totally wilted. I don't really need it to cook anymore. So the filling is done. All right, so the next thing I'm going to put in here is 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. That's going to help it to get thicker and cheesier. Some people, when they're making a cheese sauce, they'll add a lot of cashews because cashews have a natural thickener in them and they're also kind of sweet. But you don't really need to add all those cashews because you're going to add a lot of extra fat to this. So I only added a half a cup of cashews. Then the next ingredient is nutritional yeast flakes. That gives things a nice cheesy flavor. I have about a quarter of a cup, 4 tablespoons. If you don't like nutritional yeast flakes, you can certainly leave it out. There's so many flavors going on in here. You definitely could leave that out. I'm following the recipe, so I don't leave anything out. Onion powder, a teaspoon of onion powder. I use onion powder in a lot of my recipes. It's a really nice sweet flavor. Garlic powder, you could use fresh garlic if you wanted. This is really my quick and easy recipe, so you can see I'm using a lot of cheats. And then 1 tablespoon of tahini. I just found this brand and I really like it because it's smooth and I don't have to dig down in to get the tahini. So we're going to use 1 tablespoon. And that's going to give it sort of a sharp, cheesy taste. I think when you use tahini, it really kind of chases the sharp flavor of like a cheddar cheese. So that's why I use that. And then miso paste. Miso paste is wonderful. Once you get addicted to it, you'll want to keep using it. It's a paste. It's fermented soybeans. This is light, so it doesn't turn whatever you're cooking really brown. There's dark, and the darker ones have a richer flavor, I think. But we'll add a tablespoon of this. Miso paste is really nice in salad dressings and stir fries. It just adds a really beautiful depth of flavor. It's salty. I would recommend, if you've never used miso paste, to try it. Just put a little bit in your mouth so you know what you're putting into your food. If you have a allergy to soy, they have garbanzo bean, miso paste. They have a lot of different varieties. So put that over here. Next ingredient is apple cider vinegar. That's your acid, 2 teaspoons. You don't want to leave that out. Dijon mustard, about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. What I'll say about Dijon mustard is they all taste a little different, so find a brand that you like. I actually like the Walmart brand, so it just tastes good. I'm not a fan of Trader Joe's Dijon mustard because it's really, really sharp. And then lemon juice. I always use fresh lemons if you can. So about a tablespoon of lemon juice. That's another acid, which you want to have an acid in there if you're creating a cheese sauce. That's about right. And I think I've got everything in there, a pinch of salt and pepper, and that's it. Something I tell people with salt is to use your hands because you're going to use less of it. If you just start scooping it out and putting it in, you'll probably use more of it. And I just used a pinch. So I'm going to put my blender over here and then move things a little bit, you guys. So we're done with that. Put this on here. This is going to take a minute to blend, so sound is going to be noisy. Here we go. Really important before you take it out of the blender, just put your spoon in there and give it a taste. That's pretty good, but you might want a little more lemon. I'm going to turn it back on because it's still a little bit gritty from the cashews, so turn it back on. So if you've worked with cashews, you know that this is going to get thicker the more it sits. So if you put this in the refrigerator the next morning, it's going to be even thicker. It's also, it has cornstarch in it, so when it cooks, it'll get thicker. So I'm going to set that over here. It's all done. And the next thing I want to do is put my potatoes, get a really big bowl for your potatoes. And we're going to coat these potatoes with about half of the sauce. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. This is what flavors your potatoes. That's good. Mix it up really thoroughly. You can add flavors to this if you want to add smoked liquid smoke or smoked paprika. I really like the way the carrots look in this. It's just kind of fun. But if you're cooking with me, you might just have straight potatoes. So. And that's it. So let's build this. Let's take our pan, a casserole pan, and because you don't want it to stick, I would just go ahead and put parchment paper down. You could, if you have a silicone pan, there's a lot of really nice silicone pans. If you have one of those, it won't stick to a silicone pan. It might not even stick terribly to that, but it's also makes cooking and cleaning a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to add about half of the potatoes to this. And that was 20 ounces of potatoes, in case I didn't tell everybody that. I have a pretty good sized pan here too. But what's nice is when my mom made her breakfast casserole, it really congealed and it stuck together because it had eggs and cheese in it. This does too. That's what's nice about it. All right, so this is done. And you know, we don't want to put all the water in there, so I'm not going to dump it in. I'm just going to kind of, with a slotted wooden spoon, I'm just going to layer it in there. And don't worry if you do get some of the water in there, because there's so much thickener in the sauce that it will come together. Okay. I think I used more mushrooms than what was in the recipe because we love mushrooms. Mushrooms actually have a lot of vitamin D in them. And did you know that, I think I mentioned this in another show when I was cooking with mushrooms, is that you can bring your mushrooms home from the grocery store. Don't wash them because then they get slimy and they get gross. You can bring them home from the store. You can take them out on the patio on a sunny day and lay all your mushrooms out for, I don't know, half an hour to an hour. They will actually absorb vitamin D. And some people say they absorb so much vitamin D, it's better than taking a supplement. So that's what I recommend, is getting most of your nutrients from your food. All right, so we've got our vegetable filling, and then we're going to add our potatoes last. I would not use raw potatoes in this. Do not shred raw potatoes and put them in, because it will cook very differently than these frozen hash browns. And then I'm going to go ahead and add more sauce to this. There's a lot of sauce in this. Make sure you get all the edges. You want to use all of the sauce too. I'm moving it around so you can actually see the potatoes. If you wanted to, you could actually put some sauce in the filling as well. And then I'm going to take some paprika and just sprinkle it over the top. If you wanted to use breadcrumbs, you could. Just something to make it pretty. That's it. Wasn't that easy? That's so easy. So I'm going to take it over to the oven and throw it in the oven. I'm going to cook it for about 30 minutes. And then you want to make sure that you look at it after 30 minutes. It might take 40 minutes in your oven. If it doesn't start to bubble and brown on top, what I would do is turn your oven up. You could even go to broil, but don't walk away. And let it get kind of brown and bubbly and then pull it out. So let's go ahead and put this in. And here is my finished product. And I actually just sprinkled some potatoes on top so you could see the potatoes. I'm going to get a plate so we can scoop it out. And you'll see how really, really firm this is. It's just a really, I'm going to give it a taste real quick. Wow, that's so good. I'm having that for lunch today. It's kind of like, if I could describe it, I feel like I'm eating mashed potatoes with all kinds of spinach and mushrooms on it. And again, you can sprinkle more potatoes on it if you want it to look prettier on top. You could even put tomatoes on top and roast it with tomatoes. You can make it look any way you want. So thank you for joining me. I hope you'll make some breakfast potato casserole for your next gathering or for dinner, and I'll see you back here soon. Have a great weekend.